Hari Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Jyotirmayananda Society, our journey to self-realization. Please subscribe our channel for the mystical meanings of the scriptures and to enjoy daily satsang with us. We are currently studying the scripture Yoga of Perfection by Swami Jyotirmayananda Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. Yoga of Perfection is also known as Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So we are taking key excerpts and it's a very profound um, commentary. So if you find value, I hope you will find a lot of value in it. So please continue to enjoy this journey with us, where currently we are studying chapter 2, characteristics of an enlightened being, enlightened sage. So today we will be studying shloka number 56, where Lord is answering Arjuna's question. दुःखेष्वनुद्विग्नमनः सुखेषु विगतस्पृहः वीतरागभयक्रोधः स्थितिधीरमुनिरुच्यते. Meaning, he who is not agitated in the midst of sorrowful conditions and who is devoid of cravings in the midst of pleasant circumstances, who is free from attachment, fear and anger, such a sage is called a person of steady wisdom. Explanation: there are three types of miseries: Adi, adhyatmic or subjective. The misery is caused by diseases of the body and the mind. Adi bhautik or objective. The misery is caused by external beings and objects. And Adi daivik, or the misery is caused by the supernatural agencies such as earthquake, flood, volcanoes, eruptions, etc. So, a miserable condition arises in a person due to the fructification of a past negative karma or action. Acts of violence, greed, passion, and falsehood committed in the past begin to manifest their efforts in due course. When they do, the mind becomes filled with an atmosphere of negativity. Unable to endure pain, most people give rise to a state of agitation and confusion in their mind. However, such is not the case with a man of steady wisdom. He has destroyed the root cause of sorrow, which is ignorance or avidya. His past karmas continue to exhaust their momentum. The painful developments based upon his past acts are unable to agitate his mind because he is endowed with immense mental strength born of wisdom. In the same way, the positive karmas of the past give rise to pleasant and prosperous conditions. Most people fall a prey to elation and become increasingly attached to those developments. But in the case of a sage, he has transcended both types of karmas, positive as well as negative. He remains balanced even in the conditions of great success, prosperity, and joy. His mind does not develop craving towards the objects of pleasure. He has realized the infinite bliss of the self. When a pleasant condition arises, an ignorant person continues to expect the perpetuation of that condition. He does not direct his attention towards the promotion of a cause which has led him to the happy condition. A virtuous karma of the past has been the basis of a happy condition. A reflective person should continue to intensify his virtuous deeds. But instead of doing so, if he were to simply wish for the perpetuation of that condition, he is under the influence of spriha. This means craving. A man of steady wisdom is free from craving. He seeks happiness in the self. He enjoys the bliss of the Atman or the self. Therefore, he is without attachment during pleasant conditions. He does not consider the objects of the world as the cause of his happiness. When the mind becomes attached to a pleasant condition or to an object, it begins to harbor fears of losing it. Cravings weaken the willpower. Human mind, devoid of willpower, begins to intensify impressions of attachment in its unconscious depths. Every impression of attachment conceals within it a seed of fear. On the other hand, as the attachments are negated by the vision of the divine self, a sage becomes free from all kinds of fear. Even death cannot frighten him. Increasing attachment and fear render the mind confused for most people. When an object of attachment is threatened with destruction, an unenlightened person feels that he could fight with the cause of destruction and that he could save the object of his pleasure. But at the same time, he is unable to secure his object of love. So it's just a desire. This creates intense sentiments of anger and hatred towards the cause that leads to the loss of the beloved possessions. Where there is attachment, there is fear. Where there is fear, there is hate and intense agitation of the mind. A sage is free from these. An aspirant must endeavor to keep his mind free from attachment, fear, and anger. Moving on to shloka number 57. यः सर्वत्र नाभिस्नेहस्तत्प्राप्य शुभाशुभम् नाभिनन्दति न द्वेष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. Meaning, he who is without attachment in everything, and while meeting with good and evil, he neither rejoices nor does he hate, his wisdom is established. In this verse, Lord Krishna answers this question: how does a sage speak? As the subtle desire of the unconscious are dissolved with the rising of wisdom, a sage continues to experience increasing detachment from the objects of the world. The greater the detachment, the greater is his experience of spiritual expansion and profundity. When subtle desires exist in the unconscious, the conscious mind continues to harbor numerous desires, expectations, and cravings. One is unable to rise beyond the ego center to glimpse the transcendental glory of the self. The expressions of a person, whether through thought, speech, or action, are governed by egoistic concepts of joy. Therefore, when a pleasant condition arises, one begins to rejoice. One speaks highly of those who act up to one's egoistic interests. But when they do not correspond to egoistic expectations, they are denounced with bitter words. A sage, however, does not speak on the basis of his egoistic mind. His speech is backed up by the revelation that all is the self. Not only his speech, but all expressions in his personality are sustained by spiritual wisdom. Therefore, he is able to promote harmony and peace in the world in the most effective manner. Shloka number 58 of chapter 2. यदा संहरते चायं कूर्मङ्गानीव सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेभ्यस्तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. Meaning, when he is able to withdraw his senses from the sense objects, even like a tortoise that withdraws the limbs from all sides, he is then established in wisdom. The explanation question, how does a sage sit, is being explained in this verse. It has been pointed out how most people Though they may be seated comfortably on chairs and cushions, yet they are truly resting upon the objects of desire. It is therefore important to understand the mental basis of a sage in order to realize his experience of inner rest and peace. The consciousness of a sage does not rest upon the objects of the world. He sits on the immutable seat of the self. Therefore, his mind and senses are completely under his control. When the unconscious is backed up by the egoistic desires, the mind turns outwards towards the objects of the world. When the mind holds subtle interests in the objects of the world, the senses pursue the dictates of the mind. The senses follow the mind in the same way as the bees follow a queen bee. Wherever the mind sits, there the senses sit. Wherever the mind goes, there the senses go. When the mind moves towards the self, the senses are completely controlled and they can be as readily withdrawn as a turtle can withdraw its limbs. Such a person is established in wisdom. The movement towards self realization must manifest in increasing control of mind and senses. The following verses will explain the yogic techniques of controlling the mind and senses, which we will be completing starting with tomorrow's satsang. We'll be picking up verse number 59 tomorrow. This is Swami Nikhilananda. Hari Om.